Thank you. Thank you. What a moment. Ralph, thank you for that incredibly kind introduction. Thank you. Thank you for hiring me. My friends, I've never felt more purposeful in my entire life. Every day I wake up and I walk down the stairs of a home that was built by Monroe. I start my morning with a basic prayer of help, because it's a hard job. I walk down the steps and I see a Capitol that was designed and built by Thomas Jefferson. I take a right and I go work in a building called the Patrick Henry Building. And I understand that I stand on the shoulders of giants. Thank you for hiring me. We are gathered here in a moment that I hope is not lost on anyone, a moment where we remember that we were gifted by a God Almighty to be in this nation. And with that, we were handed a responsibility to be great stewards of this great country. Great stewards that remember and understand that this nation was built on rock, and yet today we see it crumbling. And we are called to remember our foundation. Our founding fathers took hammers, they took nails, and it was based on faith, and it was based on prayer, and they embedded the light. They constructed the house, they built it on rock, they unleashed a wave of freedom across the world, prosperity from sea to shining sea, the greatest nation ever built. And yet today we can feel the great American house shaking. Across our college campuses, there are echoes of extermination speech, while chaos pours across our border. The silent thief of inflation is stealing from hardworking Americans' paychecks, while governments mandate what car you can buy. We see a weakened America on the global stage, with Iran and Russia waging war and the Communist Chinese Party threatening, taking advantage of America's weakness on the world stage. Parents have been pushed out of their children's lives, expectations of excellence removed and replaced by the misguided pursuit of equal outcomes. Businesses, large and small, smothered in overregulation and overreach. And yet, friends, we are gathered here today, and I join you in a moment of unbridled optimism, because we know one basic truth: that God has blessed America. And we know that prayer is powerful, and with conviction and courage, we can restore the foundation of rock and march together into a future that has never been seen. Friends, patriots, members of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, my fellow Americans, what an honor it is to be with you today and help chart together the return to America being a nation with no rivals. We know that when Virginia and America were founded, never before had a nation been founded on an idea, not a geography. A basic truth that, in fact, the individual liberties that we hold dear are not granted by a king, not granted by a dictator, but in fact are endowed upon us by an almighty creator. And that basic truth, conceived in the spirit of liberty, compels us to never forget where we have come from, so that we may in fact clearly chart our path forward. Now, I want to apologize to everyone. For those of you that might hail from the other 12 former colonies, I am an unabashedly proud Virginian. And notwithstanding what many of you believe, this great nation was founded in the Commonwealth of Virginia. From Thomas Jefferson, crafting those immortal words in our Declaration of Independence, and almost equally important, crafting Virginia's Statute of Religious Freedom that later became the foundation for our First Amendment, to Patrick Henry, who demanded that we have a Bill of Rights attached to our Constitution in order to protect these unalienable rights granted to us by a Lord Almighty, so that a tyrannical minority could never take them away. Our founding fathers demonstrated that not only are we a nation founded on this truth, but we are a nation liberated by blood and sacrifice. And they were committed to fundamentally embedding this fundamental truth into the framework underpinning this great republic. In 1787, Benjamin Franklin said that unless we recognize we are a nation under God, we are nothing better than the builders of Babel. These foundational principles require our shared recommitment time and time again. There are certain things that are right not to be debated. Our Constitution protects freedoms, and we must support and defend it. There is dignity in work, dignity in a job, and jobs create opportunity, and opportunity creates prosperity. It is at the foundation of this great nation. Fiscal discipline underpins economic strength. We are a nation of laws, and safe communities start with great law enforcement. We must back the blue. And parents have a fundamental right to make decisions in their children's life with regard to their upbringing, their education, and their care. Because parents matter. Parents matter. Anchored by this understanding, we can build, but we must put builders back in charge, and that is our mission between now and November 5th. We must expand our majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. We must take control of the U.S. Senate, and we must put Donald J. Trump back in the White House. When we say we are a nation built on rock, that means we have the strongest military in human history to preserve and protect these freedoms and liberties, because we all know that freedom is not free. We must have a dominant economy that celebrates capitalism, the most powerful tool to combat poverty in the world, to drive innovation, and to unleash prosperity. When we say we are a nation built on rock, we have a form of self-government that beams these self-evident truths that all men are created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable right, and among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we recognize that that translates into an America that does not have a two-tier justice system where political opponents are persecuted. A nation built on rock advances energy independence, embraces all of the above God-given resources, and never withholds LNG shipments to our allies in Europe. A nation built on rock has moral clarity. Moral clarity to say that having thousands pour across our border every single day is wrong. Moral clarity to never question that we stand faithfully and unapologetically with Israel. Moral clarity. Moral clarity that says that men playing sports with women is wrong. And above all, a nation built on rock sees the role of faith scattered across our history, both inviting God into our national pursuits and asking for his help. I lift my eyes up to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. These truths are self-evident. George Washington praying over his troops at Valley Forge. Abraham Lincoln beseeching the gracious favor of God Almighty in the Emancipation Proclamation. President Roosevelt on D-Day. D-Day that we just honored and remembered the 80th anniversary of. He called our nation to prayer for our troops as they embarked on the Great Crusade with the eyes of the world upon them. These amazing men, a group of which were from a small town in Virginia called Bedford. These men known as the Bedford Boys, reared on farms, left their farms to combat evil. They stormed the beaches, crossed Normandy sands, and they did defeat that evil. One of these brothers was carrying a Bible. That Bible fell. And that Bible could have washed out to sea. But no, it was found on that beach. And it still stands today as a reminder that every endeavor needs to be covered in prayer. So many fell that day. An unwavering statement of courage and unrelenting spirit. And they lifted millions and millions out of oppression and dictatorial rule. See, these liberators, these leaders, these heroes understood that our march to secure independence, to drive out the dark, to bind the wounds of war, it all starts with this basic truth that we must look to the Lord. I'll never forget a July night in 2020. I finished my last Zoom call, and I felt overwhelmed. I went and found my amazing wife, Suzanne, and I asked her to go on a walk with me. She looked at me and said, "You don't go on walks." I said to her, there's something I wanted to discuss with her. We got to the end of our driveway, and I stopped, and I grabbed her hands, and I looked in her eyes, and I said, tomorrow I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to run for governor. Tears welled up in her eyes. Her bottom lip quivered. And she said, "Governor of what?" And at that moment, we prayed. We offered ourselves. We asked for protection. And we committed ourselves that if we were elected, we would serve. The power of prayer is amazing. I was on the campaign trail, and I was in a small town in Lynchburg at a place that serves my very favorite afternoon lunch treat called a cheesy Western. If you're in Lynchburg, go get one, but you can't eat two. And there was a woman in the parking lot. She was crying. And I know she had no idea who this person was, but I walked up to her and I said, "Ma'am, what's going on?" And she said, "They're trying to take my granddaughter away. My daughter had some troubles. She understands it. And she is going to serve out the time that she's been committed to. But there are no rights for grandparents to stand above the foster care system. That is wrong." We stood there together and we prayed. I remember it like it was yesterday. We prayed over her daughter, her granddaughter, and that if I were to win, we could change things. Friends, last month I had the honor of signing bills that put family first with regards to their children. The manifestation of prayer is everywhere. I am so blessed to have an extraordinary Lieutenant Governor in Winsome, Earl Sears, and an Attorney General in Jason Miyares, to not just work together, battle together, and walk together, but to also pray together. What an honor it is. And at a time when as a nation we see our house battered by wind and by rain, facing a choice, there are lights shining across America. I would suggest that Virginia might be one of them. You see, for quite some time, the progressive left policies had enabled government to encroach on the liberties and freedoms of Virginians. Virginia, the cradle of democracy, had been dragged out to a sea that we didn't recognize. The erosion of hope came to a head during the pandemic when progressive leadership locked down schools, businesses, houses of worship. I mean, let's just be clear. In Virginia, churches were closed, ABC stores were open. This is where Virginia was. Loudoun County became ground zero for the parents' rights movement, recognizing that a school board had covered up sexual assaults of young women. Parents were labeled as terrorists, and standards and expectations were lowered and replaced with this pursuit of equal outcomes at any cost. Friends, Virginia was ready to make a change. And a change they did. On day one, we went to work lowering taxes, reducing regulations, raising expectations of excellence for our children. And now we have more people working in the Commonwealth of Virginia than ever in the history of the state. And I dare say a state that was sinking now is arguably the best place in America to live and work and raise a family. Common sense conservative policies win because they are grounded in timeless truth. We've seen what happens to a house that is built on sand. When Joe Biden and the progressive left began to attack the basic foundation of our nation, the rock began to crumble. It began to turn to sand. And those shifting sands compromise an America that used to be an America with no rivals. The silent thief of inflation, stealing from your paychecks, tax burdens piling on and on and on, cracking the foundation, equity as opposed to excellence in education. Let's just be clear. The work that has been going on in the Biden administration has fractured America's foundation. But there is one truth. Elections have consequences, and the stakes have never been higher. We must restore a strong America, and that begins with electing Donald J. Trump. 2.5 years ago, a blue Virginia made a choice, and now it's time for America to choose differently. Now is the time to champion a future grounded in common sense, built on the spirit of liberty, the spirit of America, built on strength. Economic strength, built on free enterprise and cutting regulations and making sure that we unleash innovation. Education strength based on raising standards because our students will rise to meet them. Energy strength based on energy independence, but also energy dominance. Border strength, recognizing we are a land of laws. And not just military strength, but national strength, where our citizens stand and sing our national anthem boldly, say our Pledge of Allegiance loudly, and honor our flag daily. Today, we stand together on behalf of Americans who have never lost faith. Americans who have not stopped dreaming of a better life, a better tomorrow. The future of our country belongs to you. It belongs to these Americans whose grit and determination, whose courage and conviction embody the loyalty, the honor, the patriotism, and respect that our founding fathers instilled in this great nation. They pour the concrete. They set the pillars. They lay the wires. They turn on the light. On November 5th, when Americans across the country finalize their choice, we must come together around a proven leader. We must come together and universally support an order that will usher in an era not of Republicans, not of Democrats, but of shared American values. That is what is in front of us. And this is more than a glimmering hope. We feel it in our hearts. We feel the spirit of America awakening from sea to shining sea. Out of many formed one. We will be a nation of builders. We will march together towards the destiny that we know is our future. My friends, that proverbial shining city on the hill is the great American house. And in 5 months, we will have the choice to build it. It's time we go to work. Let's get this done. God bless each and every one of you, and may He bless these great United States of America.